I used to be really anxious about the idea of investing in the stock market, and I think there were 5 main reasons why I didn't trust the stock market, so I'd like to share them with you today. So the first was because I thought I would lose all of my money in a crash. Obviously in 2008, I remember the market crash and how that was all over the news, and everyone was saying how corrupt the whole system was and how it was all just speculation. And so I really kind of had heard from my friends that property, and everyone around me seemed to be talking about how investing in property is a good thing, but stocks are risky and you could lose all of your money and it's basically gambling. Those are the kind of stories I was hearing. And so, when I thought about taking my money that I'd spent so much time and effort earning, to think that I could maybe, even if it was just a small chance of losing it, that really didn't sit well with me. Whereas now, my point of view has completely changed. Although there is still just as much chance of a stock market crash to happen in the next 5 years and the next 10 years, it's almost guaranteed that eventually we will have some kind of crash. But I think I've come to understand that the probability of an entire market crash, completely down to zero, where the money I invested turns to nothing, the odds of that happening are very, very slim. We'd pretty much need some kind of apocalypse. And if that happens, then the cash that I have on hand wouldn't be worth anything either. So I've come to understand that the stock market has always had fluctuations. So there'll be good periods of growth and then there'll be times when it does crash. But so far we have survived all of the crashes. And every single time the stock market has ended up being more valuable than it was before the crash. So yes, if I buy stocks today, there's a chance that tomorrow they will be lower. And there's a chance that even a year from now, they might be lower than they were today. But over the long term, I'm much more likely to make money than I am to lose money. The next reason I didn't want to invest in the stock market was because I think I had a short-term view of money. So I was very used to the idea of earning money and then spending it straight away, or saving it in a bank account where I know I can always access it. And so I'd heard that because of the fluctuations in the market, it makes sense to only invest in stocks if you think that you can leave your money in there for at least 5 years. And so to me that was like, well, I don't want to do that. I think it's pretty common to have this kind of point of view when you're young because I'd only just started earning money. So maybe if I was making more money, then I could invest. Or maybe if I had a really set salary where I knew exactly how much I was going to get each month, then maybe I could invest. But the idea of saving something for 5 whole years when I was that age just didn't really seem to make sense. For me at that time, it was very hard to predict what the next 5 years would look like. I didn't want to invest in the stock market and then regret it because suddenly an emergency came up. What if my business fell apart and I had to go back to school? What if I had a medical emergency and I couldn't work? What if I really wanted to go on holiday or go traveling somewhere or move to a different country? All of those things require money. And so the idea of locking money for 5 years was really quite scary. So what's changed as far as this 5-year problem? Well, I still believe that you shouldn't invest any money in stocks that you're not willing to leave in stocks for 5 years. I think that's a pretty good rule of thumb as far as I can understand. But the thing that's changed dramatically is my attitude. Why is that? Well, I suppose it's a few things. Firstly, I've been working for longer, so I don't feel like I need to stockpile in case of an emergency quite as much. The second thing is that I have already stockpiled in case of an emergency. I have an emergency fund, which covers about 3 months of my living expenses. So if anything were to happen, I know that I'll be okay for 3 months, even if I don't earn a single penny. And also compared to before, I think I have a better idea of what the 5 years ahead will look like. So although I obviously still can't read the future, I think there's less kind of crazy uncertainties and reasons why I might need to suddenly spend a bunch of money out of nowhere. So what it comes down to is looking at how much money I have right now and thinking about what are my immediate expenses, things that are coming up that I'll need to pay for. And then pretty much everything else, I want to be investing that money. If I do that calculation and I've got £10 left over, then I'll happily invest £10, probably into stocks. If I've got £1,000, then it'll be 1,000. The short version is that I'm happy to have money tied up for 5 years or more because I'm more confident that my future income will be able to basically look after me, will be able to keep me afloat. Now, the third reason I was reluctant to invest in stocks was because I learned about inflation. The average is often around 2% or more each year. I did some calculations on long-term investing, and so I realized that £100 now, by the time I retire, is going to be worth so much less. And so I thought to myself, if I'm young, why should I invest now when it's going to be gradually eroded by inflation? So looking back, I really regret that I was so fixated on inflation. Yes, it's true that the historical average is maybe 2% or more, but if I'm looking at historic inflation rates, then I should also look at the historic growth rates for the stock market itself. And historically, the stock market has easily outperformed inflation. So yes, the money is worth less, but the stocks have grown more than the money has devalued. But the fourth reason I didn't want to invest in stocks was because I didn't think that they were going to grow enough. I remember hearing about people saying that you can get 7% growth per year, or maybe 8% if you're lucky. Some people say 9%, 10%, but generally people say that it's going to be between 5 and 10% depending on how things go. And to be honest, that didn't really seem like it was worth the hassle. Why should I take a gamble on my money just to get such a small amount of growth? If £1 turns into £1.05, then what's the point? But this is probably the worst reason not to invest in the stock market, because it really just doesn't make any sense mathematically. I do remember learning about the difference between simple interest and compound interest at school, and how compound interest is basically like an exponential curve, where the longer you leave it, the more interest you can gain. But I don't think I really put that into practice when it came to stocks, and I certainly didn't really appreciate how much of a difference that exponential curve would make. So let's say I was willing to invest £1,000 for 12 years, and if we use a conservative estimate of 6% growth in the stock market, then in the first year, the £1,000 would turn into £1,060, which is not very exciting. This is why I was so hesitant to invest with a 6% growth rate. However, if I just leave it for 12 years, then £1,000 turns into £2,000. And that really blows my mind, to think that just with a 6% growth, you will double your money in 12 years. And if you wait another 12 years and get the same 6% growth, then you'll double your money again. So every £1,000 you invest in the stock market is likely to double within 12 years. So that means if we invest £1,000 for 36 years, then we could conservatively estimate that we will have £1,000, 12 years later turns into £2,000, another 12 years turns into £4,000, and after 36 years in total, that would be £8,000, which means £7,000 profit from a £1,000 investment. That is absolutely insane. Even with some inflation taken out of that, we've still made a bunch of money just from that £1,000 sitting there. And every single £1,000 will turn into £8,000 if you leave it for about 36 years, and if the stock market kind of does what it's done typically. And the cool thing about using 5 or 6% as an estimate is that that really is quite conservative. And so there's a fairly good chance that it could be more than that. And thanks to compounding interest, if it is just 1% extra each year, that makes a huge difference. So if we were to get lucky and get an annualized return of 10% per year, then we'd expect to double our money approximately every 7.2 years. So if we could get just 10% gains per year, which, maybe that is quite a lucky scenario, but that would mean that after 36 years, our £1,000 investment would be worth. And I really want to put an asterisk on this, because growth of 10% each year is not easy to do, and we'd probably be quite lucky if we managed to get that. But if it did grow 10% per year, £1,000 36 years later would turn into £32,000. 6% growth, 10% growth, they don't sound that different, but it really does make a big difference over time. So obviously I would never tell anyone else how much they should invest. It's a very personal decision, and this is all just about my personal opinions. This isn't investment advice, and I'm not an investment professional. But I think it's really important to not be led by misconceptions. For too many years, I just thought, oh no, I don't understand that. The stock market seems complicated. It seems like it's just for rich people. Essentially, anything that I can do now to convince myself to invest just a little bit more, whether that's by finding ways to earn more or save more money so I can invest more, I really am motivated to do it because I see how much upside there is in the future. So that's been my experience of changing my attitude to stocks. And I'm actually really glad that this happened a few years ago, because it meant that I've been able to be investing, regularly for a little while. And so I'm really pleased with how that's turned out so far. And I'd like to hear your thoughts. Do you think investing is a good thing to do? Do you think stocks, do you not trust them? Why do you trust them? Let's have a little conversation about it in the comments.